I think that feels like a nice package there.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at those phones lined up. It's Felger and Mazz on 98.5, the Sports Hub.
Kiner Falefa, the tying run at third. Jarren Duran just got hit by a pitch. He's at first, 2 down. And now it's up to Ceddanne Rafaela, 280 with 4 home runs. And the first one from the righty. Swing, a little looper into right field. Coming on Martin. He will make the catch. And that's the ball game. 6-5 the final. So on an awful weather day, really matching the mood at Fenway, the Red Sox fall to a major league worst 8-17 at home. And any perceived momentum from that last road trip washed away in a 3-game sweep by Minnesota.
Yeah, tough weekend here. You get swept by the Twins at home, coming back, trying to play better baseball here. Swung the bats better, especially in Game 1 and Game 3 here. But a couple guys you rely on, Slate and Whitlock, they come in middle innings and give up the leads. They haven't done that all year long, and you're left with waiting for the Braves after getting swept here by the Twins.
It was awesome. One of the best weekends in a long time. You know, one of the reasons for that, there are many factors for that, Paul Perillo.
Well, you were waiting to come in here and do 4 hours with me.
You know, it was right on my list.
That had to be top of the list.
When Louth texted me a few weeks ago, he said, Paul Perillo, 2 o'clock. I said, in. I'll be there. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Always ready to go. Holiday fill-in guy. I'm ready. Here we go.
You know, one of the reasons why my weekend was so great? It's because I didn't watch as much Red Sox baseball as I normally do over the weekend.
Yeah, you were telling me as we came in, you went Friday night, and then you were so disillusioned. You tuned out for Saturday and Sunday.
I had a great time at the ballpark Friday night. It is still Boston's best bar, outside of the fact that the team sucks. If you can ignore that, you can get beyond that. You'll have a great time at Fenway Park.
Yeah.
So the Woo Sox on Saturday, that's a better baseball team than the Major League Club, so that was a better way to spend my Saturday. Springsteen yesterday, better way to spend my Sunday than watching these terrible, awful Red Sox. Good weekend for me, bad weekend for them. Really bad weekend for them. Welcome to Memorial Day, Paul, which is where we do the typical, big time check-in on the state of baseball, right?
It is, and I was thinking about that at the same time that you just talked about when Jim, reached out to me and asked me if I was available on Memorial Day. That's what I was thinking is, we'll be heavy Red Sox because it is that sort of official checkpoint. Like, you're either in or you're out. And I'm going to take a different approach to you. And I know how upset you are. You're definitely more into the Red Sox, day to day than I am. I still follow the team and all that stuff. Not the way I once did. But I kind of look at it with a glass half full. Because if you had a quasi-good weekend here, it's deceiving you into thinking that this team is worth investing in. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what Craig Breslow and company are going to do down there, in the coming month. But I think that should have been the final piece of evidence for you. Like, this team is just not good enough to invest in. So figure out what your valuable pieces are and get to work. Make some good trades that can alter your franchise moving forward. I don't know how much value all of these pieces have, but Aroldis Chapman right now has to be a very valuable piece to a really good baseball team.
Without a doubt.
To secure the back end of a bullpen. This guy has been absolutely lights out for a year plus now for the Red Sox. And you should be able to swing a pretty good baseball trade for Chapman at the very least. I don't know what you're going to get for Duran. I don't know what you're going to get for Sonny Gray and some of these other guys that people are talking about, but Chapman has value. It's Breslow's responsibility to figure out how to maximize that.
So I think you're onto something here, Paul. Ignore they're only 3.5 games out, because they are only 3.5 games out of the playoffs. That's baseball in 2026. We do this every single year. Oh, they're only X games out. You know how many teams are ahead of them for a playoff spot right now? Yes, they're only 3.5 out. 6.
Yeah.
6 teams. They're 11th place in the American League. They're 22-30, 8 games below 500. They're 8-17 at home. They're last place in the American League East, 11th place overall in the American League. They're only 3 games ahead of the worst record in the American League, so they're actually closer to being the worst team in the league than they are to being in the playoffs. They have the 24th best record in baseball right now.
Yeah, and
they are who they are.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at that slate that just had, and there's a couple of teams there in the Blue Jays and the Mariners, right? And I know for different reasons, Toronto's had some injury problems. Those two teams haven't played very well, but I'm looking at the rosters and looking, what those two teams did a year ago. And I can see a scenario that, okay, they've really scuttled around 500 now for, 2 months, but there's probably better baseball ahead. I can't say that for the Red Sox. So there's a difference there as to how you sort of perceive you're on the outside looking in with a mediocre record. You can do the 3.5 game thing if you want. But I think the more realistic thing is to do the 22-30 thing.
Yeah.
If you were 30-22 and you had 6 teams between you and the playoffs, I could say, hey, we're a good team. We're playing well. These other teams are going to cool off. But when you're 22-30, I don't know how you can convince yourself that you're better than you are.
They are one of the worst Red Sox teams in history so far at home, which is another sign that they're just a terrible baseball team. I mean, to be this bad offensively at home, and actually they weren't terrible offensively over the weekend. Their pitching, let them down a little bit, and they ran into outs and they did stupid things because in the end, they're not a good baseball team. But to your point, Paul, if you want to make the argument that bottoming out is actually the best thing for the future of the Boston Red Sox, I'll accept that argument and I'll make it too. And it very well might happen coming up here. Their upcoming schedule, they open a series with the Braves, who have the 2nd best record in baseball, followed by the Guardians, the 7th best record in baseball. You get the Orioles in there, who also stink. Then you get the Yankees, 6th best record in baseball, and the Rays, who have the best record in baseball. So over the course of the next 5 series, you're facing 4 teams who are significantly better than you and will probably beat the bag out of you.
So if you play really well in that stretch, you're talking about maybe they can play 500.
Right.
And all that would do is chop another month off the schedule that you're still 8 games under 500.
They are who they are. And you get reporting over the weekend that the Red Sox are trying to trade for hitters. Jen McCaffrey saying in The Athletic that the Red Sox, quote, have started exploring the trade market to bolster a lineup that has scored the fewest runs in the American League. According to a league source, Boston's front office has been making calls and canvassing the league to see what might be available. A second league source noted that given the team's widespread offensive struggles, the team isn't seeking to bolster offense at one specific position. The club is just looking to add any offense in general with a preference towards a right-handed bat. That's not a team you want to invest in. You're saying right there, well, we suck so much offensively that it doesn't matter what position this guy plays.
We'll take anything.
We'll take anybody. There's nothing more dangerous in sports than a general manager with something to prove, and Craig Breslow is trying to save his job.
Yeah.
If he goes, they cannot allow him to improve this team. They have to intervene. They can't give up any future asset whatsoever for a team that is obviously going in the wrong direction. They should sell. They should blow it up. They shouldn't just sell. They should blow it up. Chapman, you mentioned. Gray can go. Contreras, who I like, can go. Garrett Whitlock would get you a lot at this point. I'd trade him too. I mean, those are 4 guys, 2 or 3 of which could probably get you a pretty significant return. You have to acknowledge where you're at. But you have a general manager who fired Cora and said we have 135 games to turn it around, fired the scapegoat in the organization. He's now got the bullseye on his back. Now you're going to turn around and let him try and make trades in May to improve a team that is obviously not good enough, that obviously is one of the worst teams in baseball, and you're going to try and add a right-handed bat, to make your job safer? Can't happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and you make a good point about the desperation factor that Breslow is probably feeling right now, and that can be a dangerous thing. So there's a couple of ways that John Henry and company can go about it, and one of them that I would suggest is to, if you believe in Breslow, I mean, you hired him, and I know that you could make I know all the things, all the reasons why you wouldn't believe in him. He was 10th or 11th on, the list of, you couldn't get anybody to take the job, basically. But I would have that in the back of my mind, and knowing how hard it was for me to fill the job the last time. And one of the reasons why people perceived it being so difficult to fill is because you just keep recycling through these guys every 2-3 years. It's Cherington, it's Dombrowski, it's Bloom. Now it's Breslow. What's the difference? If it's the same guy in charge, you keep sort of changing your philosophy. You've sort of gone away from spending the big money that would make it a really attractive job for, a lot of guys. So you want to avoid that. Give the guy a vote of confidence and tell him, listen, you don't have to make desperate moves. We need to fix this. You're going to have some time. You're not going anywhere. I'm not sure I would be happy about that as a fan, but I'm saying if you wanted to sort of protect your team right now in the near future, maybe John Henry could do something like that with Breslow.
You have to. You either have to, and he's probably got a 5-year deal. Jared Carrabis has suggested he has a 5-year deal. This is 3 years into it. You need to communicate to him behind the scenes. Your job is safe, or you need to fire him now. It's one or the other. If you still believe in Craig Breslow, or if you want to still give him chances, not that I personally would, but if they do,
Agreed.
To your point, Paul, they have to go to him and they have to say, your job is safe. You need to sell. This team is not going anywhere. You need to give him the direction. This is your job. This is your prerogative over the course of the next 2 months. You got to strip this thing down to parts. And this is where ownership has to get involved. I don't want ownership meddling in baseball decisions, but I do want ownership setting the direction for which way your franchise is going. And it's obvious. Hey, listen, ownership's been there. They've been there for the majority of games this year. They're watching the same product we are. I know there's an idea out there that ownership is absentee. That probably was born from a few years around the pandemic where it did not feel like they were around. Trust me when I say, and we can all watch on TV. If you go to the ballpark, you can see them there in the suite. They've been to the majority of games this year. They're watching this. So they're involved. Don't say they're absentee. And now I would say because they're there, they need to give the general manager either a vote of confidence and say, you got to sell and we got to fix this thing for next year. We got to just wash our hands of 2026, or fire him right now and bring in somebody new with the direction that they need to blow this thing up. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, Paul, they have to blow this thing up. It's not working. They've got veterans who are worth something. And the reason it's not working, one of the many reasons it's not working, which we'll get into a little bit here in the program today, is this young core they've built around is not good enough. Plain and simple, it is not good enough.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Matt. I would maybe lean on the side of it's just not ready to be the focal point of especially a big market team. But yes, I agree with everything you just said. They need to figure it out. What I worry about with them is, and this is funny because I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about somehow the most outrageous analytical comment that I've ever heard came out of the Cleveland Cavaliers, over the weekend with Kenny Atkinson. But I fear that when you have this sort of metrics approach to everything, it's never about what you did. It's all about expectation. And I fear that they feel like, well, we're going to revert to the mean. We're a better offensive team than this. And I don't necessarily believe that to be the case, because I don't believe that they have a good enough offensive lineup. Everybody felt that way all winter. Yep. When they failed to get Alonso, failed to retain Bregman, everybody felt they were going to be lacking offensively, and sure enough, for 2 months, they've lacked offensively. I would even argue, like you've heard the argument with the Red Sox, like if they just had league average offense, they'd be X games over 500. Well, what if they had league average pitching?
Right.
Their pitching's been really good.
It wasn't great this weekend, but it's been really good for the majority of the year.
So I think that's due to revert to the mean a little bit too. I think they have a good pitching staff, a good, solid pitching staff, and I'm especially intrigued by the two young lefties,
no doubt,
just like everybody else. And I think those are pieces to build around. But are you going to get 30 starts out of these guys at this level?
I mean,
you think Sonny Gray's going to give you 30 starts the way he's pitched so far?
He might not. It's a good point, Paul. Like, they've been really good, but let's not act like they're the 1970s Orioles either.
They've been fantastic.
Yeah.
The pitching has been really, really good, and they're still 8 games under 500. Where will they go when the pitching inevitably slips a little bit? Because it's going to.
It can't get any better than this. It can only get worse from here from the pitching.
That was one of the unsubstantiated thoughts that I had about the Red Sox. I don't have anything to back that up, but I just feel like they're pitching out of their minds right now. They're good pitchers. I don't know if they're this.
So,
I saw Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo pitch like this for a good chunk of last year. It didn't last, did it?
No, certainly did not. So what you're saying is you're using your eyes and your gut which does still matter.
Which is dangerous. I get it. I don't have all the numbers to back it up. I don't have the spin rates and the velocities and all, the swing and miss stuff. I don't have all the numbers that you and your ilk like to throw in my face.
I try not
Where's
to look
Milliken
at them.
when I need him? I don't know.
Milliken, I beg of you, please, because I try not to look at them. Because there's one thing more dangerous than gut and feel, and that's numbers.
Yeah.
Dangerous. I see on the phone lines, we'll take care of you. 617-779-0985. We're off and running. We'll start Red Sox today. We'll get into Jaylen Brown getting second-team All-NBA. We'll get into OTAs this week. Am I correct, Paul?
Yeah, I think we got our first crack at seeing them in person on Wednesday.
Ooh. Paul's very excited.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very excited.
It's always
too.
one of my favorite days. OTAs.
Hooray. OTAs. We got that going on. There's something I really am interested in with OTAs, though. I'll tell you what that is later on in the program. And room for you, 617-779-0985. Off and running, Matt McCarthy, Paul Perillo, in for Felger and Mazz.
Felger and Mazz continue on the Sports Hub.
What do you think of Chad's aggressive sentiment?
I understand the sentiment. Soaking wet, raining, pouring, balls wet, and then it's going to skip on the throw. So I definitely understand the sentiment. It's not easy to throw balls. We saw it early in the game with Williard trying to throw the ball home and it slips out. So I totally get it, being aggressive there with one out and trying to get the game tied.
After Wong got a terrible read off the wall because he doesn't know how to run the bases because he was partially developed by the Red Sox. So things are going great. What a weekend. Banner weekend at Fenway Park. First time since 1994 that the Twins have swept the Red Sox at Fenway.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. 1994.
It's never good when you're talking about the early 90s Red Sox, Paul.
No.
I mean, yeah, it's not, and that's what they are at this point. They're the early 90s Red Sox.
Sock. Yeah, the Mike Greenwell Sox, I like to call them.
Yeah. Early Mo Vaughn, before Mo was really Mo, 95.
There was always like, so you're probably a little young for that. There was like a tantalizing hope every year. They would make a run and get themselves quasi. It was probably the early stages of the Shaughnessy illusion of contention. They would go on a run, and you'd think, oh, they're turning the corner, like Phil Plantier.
Sure.
Like
Scott Cooper, two-time All-Star,
Scott
baby.
Koopaloop. Yeah. They had some pieces, but never could put anything together. And it was, what it was. This is unequivocal. It was the least athletic team you'll ever see. Like Carlos Quintana, Tim Naring, Scott Cooper, some of the slowest individuals that you'll ever see.
If Naring can just stay healthy, Paul, they'll be good.
Naring was a good player,
he was.
But he never was what he was supposed to be.
And we'll get into the core in a little bit here with the Red Sox, but there is a little bit of that. It's you're trying to play some small ball for a team that maybe isn't quite built to play small ball the way you want it to, because they've got some guys who can run, but they're not the fastest team in history. They have a bunch of guys who don't really put their bat on the ball, yet they need to move the runner over. So it's an ill-fitting roster that can't hit for power, needs to move the runner over, really isn't good enough to do that. They can pitch and they can play defense, but they can't hit. It just does not work. 8-17 at home. They are.
I never thought I'd see something like that. My whole life, the Red Sox have been a good team at Fenway Park, and in recent years that's gone down. But 8-17 that's a different kind of depth,
and it's the home stuff too. Because throughout our entire lives, Paul, the Red Sox have what's the one constant? They can hit and they can hit at Fenway Park. Pitch. Right. That's why they didn't win a World Series for 86 years. They could hit, but they couldn't pitch, especially at Fenway Park, which is built to hit. This from Rob Bradford. Only 5 Red Sox teams in club history have managed a worse OPS at their home park. All of them coming during the dead ball era. 2 of them were not even named the Red Sox yet. They are the worst lineup in the history of the Boston Red Sox post-1920.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Worst lineup in 100-plus years.
I never thought I would see anything like it. Forever, it was always, they might lose, but they're going to lose 9-7. They're going to hit 3 homers, and they're going to be a fun watch. And then you're going to be pulling your hair out because you blow a lead late in the game or something like that. Nope.
It's not who they are.
Nope.
And yet
not this
we're
team.
getting reporting that they want to add a bat. Give me a break. Open your eyes. How about Dean in Shrewsbury? Hey, Dean.
Hey, I'm not against them adding a bat, even though they're not as good as somebody since the Boston Pilgrims, since they were the Boston Pilgrims I just want a young bat that can be part of this core right-handed. So somebody that's maybe 23 or 24 and has a year or two track record behind them. And we trade some ready win now players to that team for it. So we'd be getting younger and have somebody locked up rather than getting prospects that would probably just mess up anyways.
It's good to want things, Dean. So you want a 23, 24-year-old impact hitter, controllable. Why is that guy getting traded again? What other team out there is trading that type of hitter at this point?
Is there a way to get, like the Red Sox have turned themselves into, Milwaukee and Tampa and all those. Instead of getting like Durbin, like a young player who, the other team doesn't really want to keep.
Young player who stinks.
Can you get a young player on one of those teams who's going to be up for a contract that team doesn't want to pay?
So, couple of factors there. One, that costs a lot in prospect capital, and the Red Sox get a little bit afraid of that. Not. I will say, in Breslow's defense, he's nowhere near as afraid of dealing prospects as Bloom was. Bloom didn't want to deal any of those guys. That is a difference between the two of them. But then you have to pay that guy, and I just think nowadays in baseball. And Mazz has talked about this, and it's so true. The top 10 contracts in baseball are all hitters. They're not pitchers.
Yeah,
there's this attitude that pitching wins championships because that's how we grew up. That's what we understood. But pitching
wants to pay because of the injuries.
Right. Pitching is also nastier than it's ever been. 30 years ago, how many guys were throwing, 101 out of the bullpen? It was a handful of guys. Red Sox called up a guy in Guerrero the other day who's
35-year-old guy throwing 100.
Who was in Worcester, and it's like, so that guy, they grow on trees at this point. Power arms grow on trees. The hitters who can actually hit are rarer to find.
Yep.
And as we're finding out with a group of position players who were developed under Chaim Bloom, very few of them can actually hit at the big league level, which we'll get into here in a little bit. I want to sorry, you had a thought on that?
No, I'm just going to say you made a good point because as I was talking about that trading with one of those, sort of small market, mid-market kind of teams, well, they're also not interested in taking on your, Chapmans. Those teams aren't interested in taking on those kinds of players.
If you're trading Aroldis Chapman, which I would argue you should at this point, you're not getting a big leaguer in return because the team that's trading for that guy is trading for him because he thinks they can help him win a World Series. So you have to do a bit of a reset here. I mean, ideally, you're going to get prospects in the upper minors who are close to big league ready. Those guys are worth something in a trade. But if you're thinking you're going to get, make a baseball trade and find, again, the next Caleb Durbin, but he's actually good and he's on somebody's major league roster, that team's not trading that guy. Chances are that's a very hard thing to find.
Yep.
How about Anthony in Waltham? Hey, Anthony.
Hi, Matt. Do you think they're going to need two bats? Because I know you talk about who is or isn't producing in terms of the young guys, but young guys you can't count on to carry the lineup. And I think they have some talent, but it's like Bogart struggled in 2014. Betts took a while. Devers took a while. If you rely on young guys to carry the lineup, you're porked.
Oh, it's such a good point. They've put way too much on the plate of Roman Anthony, way too much on the plate of Marcelo Mayer, who had his 1-year anniversary at the big league level yesterday, finally played shortstop for the first time in a year. Marcelo Mayer commented on that in a piece written by Alex Spear. I want to get to that. And what's happened to this young core to the point that Anthony was making? You are relying on a lot of young guys who have not delivered anywhere near what you've needed them to deliver so far. I think we really need to start talking about this because this is not only important for the 2026 Red Sox, but to your point, Paul, if you're thinking about the future and finding a way to reset this thing and turn it around quickly, how many of these young guys do you still really believe in? And is it time to start considering that this era may have failed and it's time to move on and cash in on whatever value may be left on some of these guys? Let's get into that. 617-779-0985. One open line. Grab it. We'll get a quick update here on Sports Hub Headlines. We'll continue. It's Matt McCarthy and Paul Perillo in for Felger and Mazz.
Whee! Goalie fight.
Felger.
Whee! Look at the goalie fight.
Whoa. Mazz.
Oh, my God.
Murray.
He sucks in the playoffs.
Yeah,
That's
98.5.
great. No.
98.5.
Wonderful. Good.
The Sports Hub.
Mayer, first career start at shortstop today. 0 for 1 at the plate. He'll hammer that one. That is a fair ball down the line. That'll bring in the run. Masataka scores. It'll be a base hit as the throw comes into second. But the Red Sox lead it 4-3. His 11th run batted in. Red Sox with their 4th hit in this inning against Bailey Ober.
Yesterday, Paul, was Marcelo Mayer's 1-year anniversary in the major leagues. You know what he's hitting over the course of that last year?
I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't think it would be very high.
221.
Well, at least the first numbers are 2.
623 OPS, 6 homers. 91 games because he can't stay healthy, 292 plate appearances.
So I do think those two guys, they need to give some time to and let it develop. You can't have prospects that are, I do think that we're guilty in all markets, especially in that sport, of overrating and overvaluing the young guys, the prospects and whatnot. But these two guys, Anthony and Mayer, have been sort of rated a little bit differently than most of these. I mean, I'm with you, Matt. We could have a show. We could do the next half hour on the Donnie Sadlers of the world and, all these guys that we were promised about that never panned out. I don't remember a lot of guys that were thought of in the minor league ranks, like league-wide, the way that Anthony in particular, but Mayer also have been thought about. I'm not ready to give up on either one of these two guys. I think there's some ability there, and I think you've seen the flat. I mean, obviously more so with Anthony last year, the way he hit than Mayer, but I'm not ready to give up on those two guys yet.
So in one way, I want to say you're totally right. You can't, it's young. These guys are young. It's early in their careers. You can't jump to any conclusions at this point. On the other token, Paul, they have built the entire future of the franchise around these guys, which is not fair to them. It's not fair to these players. But that being said, I was promised in 2021 that Marcelo Mayer was Corey Seager. It's 2026, and he's anything but that. So at some point, these guys need to deliver.
Fair point.
And is it fair to them that they've been asked to come up to the big league level and immediately have an impact? No, it's not fair. That being said, they built the entire thing around them, so I should criticize them for not having a bigger impact than they've had already. And I should criticize, in actuality, what I'm really doing is I'm criticizing the organization for overhyping these guys. Because you know what? If Marcelo Mayer were Corey Seager, a lot of these guys come up right away and the true studs take the league by storm. It's just the way it is in baseball nowadays. There isn't as much development time for these true stud young players. That doesn't mean...
No, you're right. There's some example of the kid from Washington, Wood, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's been terrific.
Dynamite.
From the moment he stepped in the big league. So, I mean, I understand what you're talking about. I just do think the Red Sox are guilty of, taking the Dahlbecks and, some of those guys and, even Duran to a lesser extent, and making those guys out to be more than they are. These two, Anthony and Mayer, I think have a consensus opinion formed of them around the league that is pretty high.
Well,
so
Anthony,
I think that's a little bit different. Well, right now Anthony is certainly ahead of Mayer, no doubt.
I think we've ignored some of the backtracking that's happened on Marcelo Mayer around baseball because again, when he was drafted 4th overall, highest pick in the history of the franchise, we were told he was Corey Seager, and Chaim Bloom talked him up like you wouldn't believe. Over the course of the last few years, though, there have been some people around the game who have started to backtrack a little bit on Mayer. His prospect ranking, he was once a top 10 prospect in the game. He wasn't on a lot of publications by the time he came up. So some of the scouts, the Baseball America style people kind of started to backtrack quietly a little bit on Mayer.
Right.
In part because he hasn't really hit at the higher levels. Now, he hasn't hit at the big leagues at all. I mean, again, he's batting .221 at the big league level over the course of the 94 games. You want to know what Marcelo Mayer did at AA and AAA? So, again, the higher levels of the minor leagues.
And that's when he was always hurt, right?
Yeah.
So those are all really short seasons for him.
He's always been hurt.
Yeah.
Single A, double A, triple A, major leagues, he's been hurt. Against double A and triple A pitching, and that's where I draw the line, because once you get to double A, that's the real deal. I mean, in single A, you're playing against literal children. I think Felger would call them Czechoslovakian goat farmers. I mean, the guys you play at single A are pretty much nothing. Mayer at single A batted .283 with an .888 OPS. At double A and triple A, .266 average, .761 OPS. So the OPS goes down by 120 points. At the big league level, the OPS has gone down by 140 points, because the higher he gets, the less he hits. Alex Spear wrote this in a piece on Mayer today. He's been one of the least productive regulars in baseball. Quote, obviously I want to hit better, said Mayer. I've always prided myself on hitting, and I feel like people right now know me as a defense-first guy, when that's not really who I've ever been. My defense has just been much better than my bat, and that's what people see, unquote. Spear goes on to write, people, including other teams, see vulnerabilities, which is his nice way of saying there are people around baseball who think this guy's a bust.
Yeah, they think he's not that good. Yeah,
Yep.
that's code for he's not very well thought of around the league.
You want some more stats on why Mayer can't hit? And we saw this at double A. He can't hit the off-speed stuff. This according to Spear. He's 1 for 35 since his call-up on changeups. Can't hit the changeup. 1 for 35 in the last year. That is an .029 average. It's the worst in the big leagues. He's 2 for 34 on quote-unquote shadow zone pitches. I've never heard of the shadow zone before.
I'm gonna need you to explain that to me like I'm a 10-year-old.
I think we should banish him to the shadow realm. He's batting
the shadow
.220
zone exactly. Seriously,
the shadow zone is pitches near or just below the bottom of the strike zone, including 1 for 19 this season.
Okay.
So basically, breaking balls that look like they're strikes and drop out of the zone. He can't hit the curve, can't hit the changeup. You groove this guy a fastball, it's going to look pretty because the swing is gorgeous. But you do anything else, if you throw him a big league curveball, he can't hit it. So he might just be a glove. There's a very good chance he might just be a glove. He didn't really hit with any authority at the upper levels of the minors. He hasn't hit at all at the big league level. This guy was supposed to be the second coming.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be Corey Seager, Nomar Garcia-Parra, your building block, shortstop, middle of the infield, middle of the order type bat. He's been anything but that for about 2.5 years now. So stop overrating these guys. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So if we're talking, Paul,
I can't argue with you.
If we're talking about how you fix this thing, it's one thing to make the argument, trade Aroldis Chapman. Yeah, that's easy for you and me. We can say this team's not going anywhere. Trade the guy. Trade Sonny Gray. Trade Wilson Contreras. Trade these veterans. What are you going to do about a young core that has significant questions as to whether or not they're actually good?
So I just wonder if you had a better lineup around them, would maybe some of these struggles not be as noticeable?
Agreed.
And the numbers are the same. I'm not telling you that the numbers are going to look better, but when you base your lineup around a couple of kids like this and they both struggle, then I think you're starting to talk about, maybe this guy's a bust and maybe we need to move this guy, because they have made trades, with the kids and the Crochet deal was certainly one of those, right? Mm-hmm. They were able to move on from a guy like Kyle Teal and whatnot,
who's shown more at the big league level than Marcelo Mayer, by the way.
But why not Mayer? Why? You don't have to hold on to all of them.
Well, they did.
No, I know, and now you're in a situation where if you're selling low, and this is what gets back. I get so frustrated. This goes back to a lot of scars in my Red Sox fandom, but just. That second half that Dahlbeck had that year, and it's just anybody watching knew, sell this guy now. His value's never going to be higher. I thought the same thing about Duran a couple of years ago.
Boy, they missed on that one.
And now you're looking at sort of the guys sort of showing you who they really are, and now you don't have any win. So I still think Duran might have some value. I don't know what you're going to get for him. But you might be able to get something for him. You could sell it as you have the logjam at the position. It's not that we don't like the player; it's that we can't find everyday solutions with all the, or if you wanted to hold on to him and do something with Abreu. Now, I like Abreu more because I think he's a more well-rounded player, but that's okay too. You have a logjam, move one.
Well,
but they just wait and they wait and they wait, and then you get in a situation now where no one's hitting and there's no value there
on pretty much all of these guys. And if you think it's making it up, I want to go back to what they said about this core. I think the defining comments of this decade of Red Sox baseball were made 3 years ago. I want to remind you what somebody said. Somebody in the organization, a high-ranking official in the organization, like Paul is with the Patriots.
Like
an even higher ranking official with the Red Sox, who said what we should expect and what was to come. And 3 years later, what do we have to show for it? The most important comments made by anybody associated with the Red Sox in the last probably 5 to 6 years. We'll remind you of those next. I see on the phone lines. I promise we'll take care of you. 617-779-0985. It's Matt McCarthy, Paul Perillo in for Felger and Mazz.
Sean and Lawrence. Go, Sean.
You keep saying, I didn't actually watch the game, whether it's Patriots, Celtics, Bruins, whatever. Isn't your job as a talk show host to actually watch sports?
So I would say my job is to get you to listen. That is the job. Mission accomplished.
Take this job and shove. Felger and Mazz, 98.5, the Sports Hub.
So I'm hoping today, when you think about what we always talk about and where we're going, and this vision of a Red Sox organization that every year is consistently contending for championships, I'm hoping that vision's a little clearer for you today, knowing that this guy's going to be right at the middle of it, what we're going to do around him. And I don't want to get into names because I don't want to forget anybody, but who we have, the players that have joined us through free agency, players we've acquired, whether through trade, Rule 5, and players we've grown, that this staff here has grown. And you know who we have, and there's more coming. And, it's not always linear. It's not always easy. We've taken a couple haymakers. You know what? We're probably going to take a couple more. This is baseball. It's not supposed to be easy, but I want to be clear. We're going to do this. It's going to be awesome.
I just love the end of that. That's the line that it's like it hangs over you like a cartoon bubble, and it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. That was 3.5 years ago at this point, at the Rafael Devers extension press conference, where, Bloom took a victory lap like you wouldn't believe. We're going to build around Rafael Devers, and look at all these players that we have coming up. Again, the end of that, it's like, the names. All right, here are the names. Let's just stick to the big three. Bloom's big three.
Okay.
The core of the Red Sox moving forward. This is why we went to the bottom of the league in 2020, why they were in last place in 22 and 23. This is why we sacrificed those years so we could develop the next great Red Sox core. Roman Anthony, who I still believe in, is hurt again.
Me too.
Again, got hurt swinging the bat again. Yeah. So that's concerning. I think if he stays healthy, he's going to be a spectacular player. I still believe that. But we have to acknowledge that he's once again hurt, and there's nothing that will derail a career more than injuries. So there's that. We just covered Marcelo Mayer, who again is batting .221 with a .623 OPS in 91 games and did not hit at the upper levels of the minors with any level of authority. So there's Marcelo Mayer. And then there's Christian Campbell, who's in AAA this year, batting .250 with a .717 OPS, 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases. And if you haven't been to see him in Worcester, he is a wreck in the outfield. He is so bad. Has no position. He's not an infielder. He's not an outfielder. He's a DH who really isn't hitting at AAA. That's the big three. And that's before we even get into a lot of the other pieces that weren't necessarily drafted by Bloom, but were a huge part of this is going to be the next core of the Red Sox. The Brian Bayos of the world, Jarren Duran, Tristan Casas. Rafaela looks like a solid player, but he's not going to be a superstar for you. Run down the list of core pieces. Connor Wong acquired in the Mookie Betts trade. He was supposed to be your catcher of the future, right?
Yep.
Just about every single one of those guys so far has not delivered. You could argue so far is a bust or something close to it.
And what's frustrating too is all the guys that they signed on those, little 1-year deals, short-term deals, some of which kind of panned out. And they just weren't really content to stick with it, and they just wanted to move on and get the next one of those guys.
Alex Bregman
Yeah, well, yeah.
Michael Wacha.
Bregman being the most recent one. Yep. Wacha would be one. And some of the other ones, I think they were right. A guy like Tyler O'Neill, I think they were right to move on from him.
Hunter Renfroe.
Renfroe, same thing. But, they were able to have some success, a modicum of success with those guys as Red Sox, and then they just sort of, turned it over. It's like way back when in the early 90s, I was in the sports department at the Boston Herald working with none other than Michael Felger and Tony Maserati and, the rest of our cast of idiots. And, we had a gentleman named David Catania who used to love the Red Sox. He was a copy editor by trade. He was a good writer also, wrote a lot of Red Sox stuff. And it absolutely, he despised with the Tony La Russa-ism of baseball. Just sort of that constant churning in the bullpen, right? Every single thing is going to be a matchup. We're going lefty, righty. Basically the inception of games taking 3.5 hours, Matt, right? And he should just say it was just it's the endless search for the guy who doesn't have it. That was that was the way he used to sum up baseball, modern baseball in 1994 was we're just going to keep going to the bullpen until we bring in a guy who doesn't have it, and finally we lose the lead. Because you can't just let a guy pitch an inning and mow him down and then maybe bring him out for another inning. And now I understand people listening are like, what is he talking about? That's what everybody does now. I know how it's done now.
Yeah.
But it was kind of unconventional when Tony La Russa first started doing it. And he had a lot of success doing it with some really, really good Oakland A's teams in that era.
That'd be awesome.
But that's what this reminds me of. We're going to bring in this guy, and Bregman's going to be good for us. We could do better than that, though. We're going to get another guy who's going to be better. And then sooner or later, you don't hit. Wilson Contreras has been pretty good for them, right? I don't know. How long is he going to be here? I mean, he's a year or two. He's a little bit older.
Sonny Gray, same thing. He's been pretty good for them.
They need the linchpin guy. They need to bring in, and I don't care who it is. You got to decide who it is. But it was always, the Red Sox have interest in Juan Soto. No, they didn't. Shohei. Well, they need a guy to put in the middle of the lineup so Roman Anthony isn't the face of the lineup.
But we were told that that's what these players were going to be, because I think you're getting to an important point, Paul, is that a lot of the veteran guys they've brought in, and we're repeating this discussion every year, well, should you sell Contreras at the deadline? Should you trade Chapman at the deadline? They've actually hit on a lot of their veteran, short-term free agents. Run down the list. Kenley Jansen was good for them. Chris Martin was good for them. Justin Turner was good for them. Tyler O'Neill was good for them. Hunter Renfroe was good for them. Michael Wacha was good for them. There have been a couple other pitchers that they've brought in. I'm drawing a blank on, because they keep rotating through guys year after year after year after year, and they hit on a lot of them. Veteran players have not been the problem. This young core has not been good enough.
Right. So Wacha is a good example. And maybe you'll have the chronology better than I will, but they had Wacha, and then we could do better. We're going to go. The next flyer we're going to take on 1 year is Walker Buehler.
Yeah. Okay. I think Walker was 2 years before, but you're right. They keep rotating. But sooner or later,
the guy that you bring in to replace that guy isn't going to be as good as that guy.
Right.
Because it's impossible to hit on every one of those. And you're right. They had some success with those short-term veterans to plug in, and they just don't necessarily seem to want to stick with any.
They've had some pretty good role players over the years, but they have not
Justin Turner would be another example. They had a good year for them.
They have not had the linchpins, and the reason they haven't had the linchpins is because they decided from I think both a financial perspective and a baseball perspective that the way they were going to get those linchpins is they were going to draft and develop them. And it was going to be Roman Anthony and Marcelo Mayer and Christian Campbell who were going to be the linchpins of the Red Sox moving forward, along with Brian Bayo and Tristan Casas, and Wong was going to be your catcher, and run down the list of prospects they've either traded for or drafted and developed themselves, this is how we're going to build the team. We're going to be patient. We're going to develop these guys. We're going to rotate a whole bunch of veterans through because we think we can be savvy and find the right guy. And actually, more often than not, they have been savvy. In a vacuum, the Gray trade is good. In a vacuum, the Contreras trade is good. Signing Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin and Aroldis Chapman, that's all worked. What hasn't worked is what we were promised, which is that these young players, when they came up, were going to be stars and superstars, and it was going to happen in relatively short order. I want to go back to the statement that Bloom made in the days after they fired him. He declared victory, Paul. He said, "Great things are now in store for the Red Sox, and while I'm sad that I won't be watching them from the same chair, I will be very proud. Red Sox fans, you are the best. Your passion fueled me daily and added meaning to everything I've done here. You very much deserve more championships, and you will get them." The statement was, we've built the next great Red Sox team. It's Mayer, it's Anthony, it's Campbell. What we've done over these years, what we've done going back to 2020 is going to build the next great core of a Red Sox roster. And it hasn't. It hasn't. Because just about every single one of these kids they've brought up has underachieved. And you can say it's still early, and it is.
But you're right. You can't argue with the numbers.
And
221 from Mayer. I mean, like, you can't argue with that. I mean, Campbell's in the minors.
I don't want to hear it's too early when I was told that this was the answer. I mean, they were in your face. This is the answer. Again, we're going to do this. It's going to be awesome. That entire cut on the day they signed Rafael Devers, Bloom still turned it into, and look at our prospects. Look at our prospects. So you can't say, and look at our prospects for 6 years, and then have me say, well, it's still early. No, I was promised. I was promised that these guys were going to be good, and they need to be better than they've been early on.
It's a fair criticism.
It's not about the veterans. It's not about anything else. The core is not good enough.
You can't tell me to look at the prospects, and then when I look at the prospects and I don't like what I see, it's unfair that I criticize it.
It's too early. Oh, it's Boston's a tough market. No. Marcelo Mayer was supposed to be Corey Seager. If he's not Corey Seager, I need to criticize you for telling me he's Corey Seager. I see. I promise you, I'm sorry. We'll take care of you. 90 seconds, no commercials. To your calls right after this. Matt McCarthy, Paul Perillo. Just a quick update here on the headlines.